Unnamed Memory may be the worst anime adaptation of all time. It does something no other anime has been able to do for me. I'm going to talk about why that is, and how you don't even have to be a fan of the manga to be able to tell. On paper, the premise of Unnamed Memory is interesting. A man named Oscar with a curse that prevents him from having an heir is naturally desperate to rid himself of it. Inevitably, this leads to this Chad doing everything in his power to free himself, which leads to him arriving at a tower where if he can defeat it, he'll be granted any wish he desires by the witch at the top. He conquers that tower, which leads to a meeting with the witch, Tanasha. When he asks to be freed from his curse, she says it's not within her power to do so. Then she proposes an alternative solution. All he has to do is find a partner capable of overcoming said curse to produce a child. That attempt at playing Wing Woman fails hard because he goes, "Okay, Tanasha, I choose you," as she would theoretically be the only partner capable of achieving that goal. She balks at this, therefore he changes his wish to give himself a year to win her over while she works on breaking the curse in her own way. Presumably, he would have to woo this reluctant witch into falling for him as she tries to break the curse placed on him by another witch. Theoretically, there would be tension with this time limit and competing means of reaching that goal. Unfortunately, that's where the show begins falling apart, because they'll have her say things like, "I'm not going to marry you," only to lay in bed with him, sit on his lap, or even kiss him shortly after saying that. There is no context given for any of this. These scenes are completely out of place. I legit thought I skipped an episode and went back to check only to find out, no, this really did come out of nowhere. The worst example of this comes when we get a betrayal arc which had every element you'd want to make it great. But we the viewers only get the Spark Notes version. Hell, we get the Spark Notes version of the Spark Notes version. This story that clearly had layers and history behind it gets resolved so quickly and easily that you don't end up caring at all. In fact, you feel disappointed at best and pissed off at worst. That's really how everything goes. You'll get an interesting build with enough character moments to know that the story knows what it's doing, only to be followed by an abrupt end, and all it makes you want to do is see it handled by someone else. What makes it so disappointing is the characters are great. The story they are trying to tell has a lot of potential. Oscar and Tanasha have great chemistry and are fun to watch. As early as episode 1, you get won over by how endearing they are, but it's also disjointed from there. I've never read the manga, but this is the first time I could literally feel there is a great story here. All of the setups are good, the dynamics are great, and even the conclusions work, but it's so rushed that it doesn't hit you the way it should. There is no other anime I've ever been able to tell that with. Has that ever happened for any of you? Where even without knowing the source material, you could tell the adaptation wasn't doing it justice? It's a bizarre feeling. I've heard that it intentionally rushed the introduction to get into the meat of the story, and I can't help but be disappointed by that. Stories that take the proper amount of time to tell its story, like Frieren, usually turn out far better. I can't think of a single example where intentionally rushing the introduction to a story has ever worked out, especially one heavily centered around romance. Rushed might not even be a strong enough take. The more research I've done, the more I've learned they outright skip a lot of the source material even as early as volume 1. Cutting such tremendous amounts of material is a dumb decision in the first place, but also the relationship building moments? The entire show centers around Oscar and Tanasha. Their moments are the most important part of the story. That's the last thing that should have been cut. It really is a shame. It hits all these big plot points, and the introduction to them is usually really engaging and intriguing, but nothing is handled with the care it should be, so it all feels meaningless. With that, I'm out.